Every year, usually in January, I begin to think about when I'm going to go on retreat. We had a terrific retreat. I came home on Wednesday evening about 9 o'clock. Next morning, Thursday morning, I get up usually at 6 o'clock, go to Mass at the seminary. So by the time I get out of the house, it's 10 after 6, 6:15. Get in my car, start driving toward the seminary for Mass. And apparently I didn't stop at a stop sign. And there was one of Munline's finest said I didn't stop. And cost me $200 and some a couple months later. Come home, fixed breakfast for my wife, which I normally do. Went in, showered, shaved. As I'm shaving, I noticed I have a huge tumor on my neck. I said, wow, that's cool. So I called the doctor, who's a good friend. I says, I got a tumor on my neck. He says, if it's there tomorrow, come in. Well, the next day, it was there. I went in. He doesn't work on Friday, so his partner took one look at it and said, you're out of here. I said, what? He says, you're out of here. He sent me over to a surgeon about a mile away in Arlington Heights. Doctors are doctors at Northwest Community Hospital in Arlington Heights, which I love dearly. And took one look at it and said, come back next week. I said, what if it's gone? He said, still come back. So the following Friday, I show up, and he takes a biopsy of the tumor. And he said, I'll let you know by Tuesday what's going on. So by Tuesday, he called me and says, you have a cancerous tumor. And thyroid cancer, he said. So they did some other tests and found out that I have a very, very rare cancer of medullary cancer. I shouldn't have it at my age. It just doesn't happen. So there were some tests, other tests done, and they prepared me for surgery on Holy Saturday. So I have a soldier who's a colonel in the Army. He's stationed over in Norway. And I emailed and told him I have a surgery on Holy Saturday. He thought that was terrible that I would have surgery on Holy Saturday. And I thought it was cool because I figured my throat's going to get cut on Holy Saturday, and I die, and I resurrect on Sunday. So I thought this was really cool. I thought this was a great way to end my life. And so then they had some complications. They thought that it metastasized, because that's the kind of cancer this is, it metastasizes quickly. They thought it had gone to my lungs and liver, I guess. So I had this endocrinologist physician who was associated with the hospital, and they canceled the surgery on Holy Saturday because of various reasons that she determined. And people began to find out. I have a network of a lot of people here in the Chicago area and other places, Wisconsin. I've been accused of knowing everybody in Chicago, but the people that just got off the airplane at O'Hare. It's not true anymore, but it may have been at one time. But. So anyway, people began to find out, and they would say, Tom, what do you want me to do? Just say Hail Mary. That's it. Just say Hail Mary, that's all. That's all? That's it. Just say Hail Mary. So people, I would do that through email, I would do that phones, texting, just say Hail Mary. So there's a regular group of people that go to Mass at Marytown every morning, and there's a woman there that I know. I'll call her Lucy. She came up to me one morning after Mass and she said, Tom, are you afraid? I said, no. She says, why not? I said, because I'm not. She says, how could you not be afraid? I said, Lucy, I said, we just heard in Mass the psalm, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom should I fear? I mean, we just doing this stuff lip service, or does this mean anything to us, or what? What do you think? And she just looked at me and basically was stunned and walked away. So life was moving forward. The date was set for May the 10th at Northwest Community Hospital. In other tests, they wanted to determine whether or not I had this other metastasized cancer, and they did a PET scan, found out I don't. So the green light for May 10th went. So I used to teach at Northridge Prep. Father Rocky Hoffman, Frank Hoffman was my boss there. And he's one of the greatest priests I've ever known. And he got word that I had this thing. So he calls me up on a Saturday before and he says, Tom, he says, I hear you're under the weather. And I said, well, that's an understatement. And he says, so tell me about it. So I told him. And he says, what do you want me to do? I said, say Hail Mary. He said, that's all? I said, yeah, just say Hail Mary. He said, okay, here's what I'll do. Now, Father Rocky is executive director of Relevant Radio. He's turned that whole station around. He's a gem. So he says to me, I'll tell you what I'll do. One surgery. So I think it's set up for 2. It'll cut my throat at 2 o'clock. He says, I'll tell you what I'll do. At 12 o'clock, this other sidekick of his that's on the radio all the time, he says, I will announce that you're going to have your throat cut to an audience, and all you want is a Hail Mary. And so I'll make that announcement. And I said, terrific. He said, you probably get about 20,000 Hail Marys. I said, wow. I said, that's 400 rosaries. I said, that should do some good. So he says, okay. So sure enough, Thursday came and I was driven to the hospital. And what I love about Northwest Community Hospital is that the Blessed Sacrament is there. It's on the 3rd floor. There's a little chapel and some ingenious people, there's a little closet and they put the Blessed Sacrament there. It's there 24/7. So I went in and said hello. I didn't know if it was going to be my last goodbye or what. I didn't know. But anyway, it was a cool thing to do. Said the Angelus. And actually, yeah, still said the Angelus. And I went about my business. And it was as if when I registered to go in for surgery, it was as if somebody grabbed me by the hand and walked me through. I registered at Northwest Community Hospital at 12 o'clock. I was discharged at 1300, 1 o'clock the following day. 25 hours to the hour. No pain, no infection, no fever, nothing. So the operation turned out to be a complete success, as I subsequently found out. I emailed Father Rocky when I got home. I said, did you keep your word to the Hail Mary thing at noon? He emailed me back, he says, no. Okay. He said that he did it at the hour of divine mercy, 3 o'clock. Well, as it turned out, they pushed my operation back an hour. They cut my throat at 3:03. So he began to ask the people listening to the radio to say the Hail Mary at just moments. At the very same time, this Dr. Aki, who's one of the greatest surgeons of all time, cut my throat. So 5 hours on the operating table, and overnight, and I even got up in the middle of the night and had to go to the washroom and had a male nurse, very helpful, courteous. And I needed some exercise, so I exercised for a few minutes. And while he held this bag and all that kind of, it was kind of cool. And when I did that, I fell asleep for a couple hours, got a good night's sleep. So I was discharged. I lost my voice for 2 months. I was operated on May 10th. I didn't regain my voice until July 10th, which was my birthday. The amazing thing is that they did a pathologist report out of Mayo on the operation and biopsies taken. And those people, those geniuses up at Mayo Clinic said, there's not a trace of cancer in my body. So it's all gone. I take no radiation, I don't do anything. The only thing I have to do is take a little pill because of the thyroid's gone. So I take that little puppy every day. So I went back, saw the doctor a week or so after surgery, and I said, Dr. Aki, how do you explain it? No infection, no pain, no bandage on my neck, nothing. He said, well, you were a great patient. I thought, wow, is that humility? So then I asked the doctor, a female doctor, an endocrinologist, I said, Dr. Bellino, I said, she told me, she came in with this big smile when I went to see her, and she says, you know, you don't have to do anything, everything's all perfect, and she was so happy and happy and happy. And I looked at her, I says, Dr. Bellino, I says, do you believe in God? And she looked at me funny, you know, you can't talk like that anymore. She looked at me and she says, do I believe in God? And I said, yeah, I believe in God. So I don't know. She says, do you think we ought to check the yellow pages? I says, yeah, I don't know. I said, so then she opened up and she said, yes, she does. And she's helping some Holy Communion girls and boys with First Communion over at Technique and that kind of thing. The whole conclusion of the whole thing was, I said it right from the very beginning. Just say Hail Mary. Just let it in Mother Mary's hands and don't worry about it. And that's exactly what happened in this case. So, I'm asked to give, what 3 good tips would there be for life or whatever. And I would say this, I would say John Paul left me, personally, with a belief, do not be afraid. I'm a pugilist at heart. I'm a boxer, judo, taekwondo, wrestler. I love to fight. And I think I've got about 1 left in me, but John Paul said, don't be afraid. And I think people have to take that really personally. They have to stop, don't be afraid of anything. Just, you have the faith, we have our faith, we've got everything. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, I've learned that a digital clock is a great way for me, it triggers something in my brain, a digital clock does, on time. For example, I have a kid brother who died at the age of 30, and his birthday was July 16th. So every time I see 7:16 on the clock, I think of my kid brother saying aspiration for him. I think about 11:22. 11:22 is when they killed Jack Kennedy. I happen to like Jack Kennedy. And that's what I do. I look at that, and that's what I do. And maybe the third thing is, I think we have to remember that each one of us are children of God. I'm a son, women are daughters of God, and I think we have to remember that. And as the more we remember it, the more we put ourselves in the presence of God, the easier this idea becomes of not being afraid. Any questions?
It's easy to say, do not be afraid, but so what? How do you actually do that? Is that just a test of your faith every time that you are tempted to be afraid, or what further explanation can you give to that?
Well, in my own life, I would believe that I've had a very extended, broad journey, and I've been in a lot of situations. I used to officiate high school and college basketball, and done a lot of things. And I've just been in situations all the time where I don't let fear take over my actions. I don't do it. And it's all because I just trust in God. I mean, when my wife and I were married some years ago, she says, well, you picked a gospel passage, and I did. It's the 6th chapter of St. Matthew, where our Lord is given the Sermon on the Mount. He says very clearly, trust in God. You know, I take care of the birds and the flowers, and you know, you're more important than that. So trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. And so that's been my motto. I trust whatever our Lord wants. If He wants this, He can do it. I mean, why would He give me a tumor that had all the earmarks of death within a year, and then within a stroke of a couple of months, He allows one of the great physicians that live among us, Dr. Aki, to remove it, and there's nothing left. So what was the purpose behind that? Anybody else? Questions? Yes, ma'am.
In your professional life, you say that you're a consultant. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Jeff was kind enough to call me a consultant, but actually I've sold everything in this world but flesh. And I was a teacher at Northridge for 2 years. Father Rocky brought me on board there for 2 years because there was some stuff there that he wanted me to handle for him. And it was done. I just taught out at Great Lakes Navy Training Center for over 5 years. I taught Navy sailors everything there is to know about money. The sailors when the sailors come out of boot camp, they go to a schoolhouse for 5 days. And my colleagues and I taught them about money. I happen to have a big background in money, so I was hired to do that. And so for 2 days, we teach them 10 lessons. They have to take a test and pass it. So I have every kind of a job that a Navy Sailor has ever had. And for example, with the Navy SEALs, I must have taught hundreds of Navy SEAL candidates that go out to Coronado when they leave there. Probably I taught thousands of Navy Sailors, but we had an individual personality and character in our own classroom. So we had to follow the script that the government gave us. We had PowerPoint, we had the books. But we could do what we wanted. My boss was very lenient. He was a Knight of Columbus, and he was a former lieutenant colonel in the Army, and he gave us a lot of freedom. So I was able to offer the sailors lots of good ideas about forming good habits, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughter. I was pretty much determined to be the finest instructor on the base for teaching this course because of various ways that I have of running the classroom. So I've been in finance a lot, I've owned my own businesses, I've done everything. So it's pretty much, consultant is a great innocuous term right now. Is that an answer?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
I was just looking at your number 2 suggestion about using a digital clock and how perfect it is, because that goes to the 12 months of the year, 12 hours on the clock. So you've got to be conscious the first 30 to 31 minutes, and then you can relax for the rest of the hour, I guess.
You know, the more people you know and their birthdays and their anniversaries and other things, people who die, for example, or something, you know, the triggers. It all depends how well developed your mind is. And these dates and times pop up. And the more you use it, the more you find it. So you can't help but look at a clock oftentimes without saying an aspiration for somebody or saying a prayer for somebody. And even if it's a daily, like today's what, the 17th or something of April? Well, the 14th, for example, was the day Lincoln was shot. So it was easy to remember Lincoln and other people on the 14th of April, for example. You know, so there's a particular dates that trigger the same thing. I happen to be a history guy, and so a lot of that stuff comes through the clock. Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you. Thank you.